Hey guys, tonight we're wandering into the dusty hush of ancient Egypt, where the sun rises like a hammered copper disk, and the air already smells like stone and sand. You squint into the bright morning, stretching out your arms, feeling the familiar ache in your neck. That ache? It's from your pillow. And no, it's not one of those fluffy cloud-like numbers you probably imagine. It's a block of stone. Smooth, curved, carefully carved, but still stone. A pillow you can't really sink into. A pillow that holds your head up like a little stone pedestal. And yet, here you are, waking up on it every morning, like it's perfectly normal. It's not. You probably wouldn't survive this sleep system. Honestly, one night with a stone pillow, and most of us would be booking a chiropractor by breakfast. But here, in this sleepy village by the Nile, this is just how things are. The stone pillow is as common as sandals, as taken for granted as the sunrise. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your local time and where you're listening from down in the comments. Always love seeing where the sleepy postal crew is tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink against the pale morning light and shift your head slightly on the stone. It's cool, solid, and, well, still not soft. The curved cradle is meant to support your neck, not your whole head. If you slide down too far, the edge presses against your ear in that unforgiving way stone does. If you slide up too high, you're practically hanging your neck over a ledge. So you adjust, finding that sweet, precarious middle ground where the pillow just barely supports the base of your skull. The mat beneath you is woven rushes, scratchy against your back. A thin linen sheet barely holds back the morning chill, but soon the sun will push that chill away and the day will slide into its usual furnace mode. For now, though, it's cool. The sand outside is pale and quiet, undisturbed except for the faint prints of a passing ibis. Your house is made of mud brick, its walls etched with the faint impressions of the straw that holds it together. No glass windows, just woven shutters and the steady pulse of dry air. You sit up slowly, the stiffness in your neck easing slightly as you roll your shoulders. You give your pillow a lazy glance. The stone headrest, worn smooth from years of use, looks innocent. Enough. It's not some awkward rock picked up from the riverbank. It's carefully carved, a simple base, two supporting legs, and a curved top that cups the neck. It's a headrest with purpose. Some even have little protective symbols etched into them, because sleep here is more than rest. It's a passage into the risky world of dreams. Historians still argue whether the average Egyptian actually liked sleeping on these things, or whether it was just one of those cultural habits no one dared question. Some say the stone pillow's elevation was practical, keeping the sleeper's head cool and lifted away from crawling insects. Others believe it's deeply tied to religious beliefs, a way of aligning the body properly in life and in death. And some, very sleep-deprived scholars, suggest it was just what everyone did, and nobody thought to complain. You step outside, the morning air brushing against your face, bringing with it the faint scent of barley, Nile mud, and sun-warmed stone. Your neighbor is already awake, carrying a clay pot on her head, balanced like she's born to it, which, to be fair, she probably was. She nods in your direction and mutters a greeting. You nod back, still working the kink out of your neck. You shuffle toward the small market square, the soles of your feet dusty from the morning path. Everyone here has a stone pillow at home. Some, the wealthier ones, have wooden versions, smooth acacia headrests, or even ebony if they're really fancy. But most of the villagers? Stone. Solid, unapologetic. A few kids run past you, laughing, chasing a scruffy dog who somehow managed to steal a bit of flatbread. Their feet kick up little clouds of dust that glimmer briefly in the early sunlight. You pass by a low wall where someone has set their pillow out to warm in the sun, not because it needs it, but maybe because the ritual feels right. There's something oddly comforting about the way these stone headrests just exist. No one seems to think of them as uncomfortable. It's just how you sleep. like the way you might adjust a lumpy hotel pillow and pretend it's fine. Only here, the lump is intentional, and everyone agrees that it's just what's best. You make your way to the workshop, where the stone carvers are already at it. The tap, tap, tap of chisels echoes in the morning stillness. One man, his linen tunic smudged with gray dust, is carving the curve into a new headrest. The stone is smooth and pale, the edges just starting to soften beneath his careful hand. You pause to watch. The shape is always the same, a low base, a curved top, the sides narrowing slightly. It's a design that's persisted for generations, passed down like recipes and good fishing spots. The carver glances up and gives you a crooked smile. He's made dozens of these. Hundreds, maybe. Enough to know that a good stone pillow isn't just about shape. It's about weight, balance, even the grain of the stone. You wander to the pile of finished headrests, stacked neatly by the wall. Some are plain, some have faint symbols ankhs. Protective eyes, simple geometric lines. The best ones are polished to a soft sheen, their edges worn like river stones. There's no padding, no cloth covers, just stone. You think about your own pillow, waiting back home on the mat. How, despite its unforgiving surface, there's something familiar in the weight of it, something that makes the sleep feel secure, as if anchoring your head to the earth somehow steadies your dreams. The sun creeps higher now, warming the walls and softening the sharp chill of morning. The carvers return to their chisels, the rhythm of their work blending with the faint calls of distant herders moving their goats toward the river. You step away from the workshop, your feet brushing over the fine dust that settles like powder across the village paths. You'll come back later, maybe to choose a new headrest, maybe to linger by the workbench and ask too many questions about stone grain and carving tools. But for now, you head toward the baker's stall, where the first rounds of bread are starting to puff on the hot stones. Your neck still aches a little, but somehow you're not in a hurry to fix it. You reach for a round of flatbread, still warm from the baker's stone slab. The heat seeps into your fingers as you exchange a quiet nod with the baker, his linen cap already speckled with flour. You take your bread and wander toward the shade of a tamarisk tree, pulling off small pieces and chewing slowly. The day is still young, still stretching its sandy fingers across the village, and your neck is settling, as if it's finally accepted the stone pillow's stubborn geometry. You lean back against the tree, the bark rough against your tunic, and watch as a group of women shuffle past, their arms draped with bundles of linen to be washed at the river. One of them balances a carved headrest atop her bundle, a new one, maybe for a child, or maybe to replace one that cracked under the weight of someone's dreams. They pass you, their chatter drifting behind them like a ribbon, light and familiar. Stone pillow is not just for sleep. It follows you to the afterlife. The ones buried with the dead are often more carefully decorated, painted with protective gods, wrapped in spells meant to guard the sleeper's soul. Historians still argue whether these were everyday objects or crafted specifically for tombs. Some believe the burial headrests were ceremonial, while others think they were simply the sleeper's personal pillow, tucked into the grave like a favorite pair of sandals. You finish your bread, brushing crumbs from your lap, and stroll toward the riverside. The Nile glimmers in the late morning sun, wide and patient, its surface dotted with reed boats. A fisherman waves lazily as you pass, his net trailing behind him like a sleepy spiderweb. You can almost hear the clink of stone on stone as someone downstream sets their headrest on a rock to rinse it. You crouch by the river's edge, dipping your fingers into the cool water. You splash your neck, chasing away the last of the stiffness. You wonder if the pharaohs had softer pillows, maybe linen-wrapped, maybe cushioned with rare feathers from foreign lands. But according to temple carvings and surviving artifacts, even royalty often used stone. Perhaps their dreams were heavier, their burdens needing more solid anchors. You collect a handful of smooth pebbles and toy with the idea of carving your own headrest, though you know it would take more than idle curiosity to shape the right curve. The carvers you watched this morning have years of practice, and even they still get it wrong sometimes, a headrest too steep, a curve too sharp. A base that wobble, on the elders, a man with a beard as thin as river grass, once told you that the best headrests grow better with time. The more you use them, the smoother they become, as if your dreams slowly polish the stone. He said this while leaning on his staff, a little mischievous glint in his eye, as if he knew something. You didn't, or maybe he just liked seeing you puzzle over it. You rise and walk back toward the village, your feet kicking up soft plumes of dust. A cluster of children plays near the well, their voices rising in uneven chorus. One girl has a headdress tucked under her arm like a prized possession. She pretends. It's a shield, then a seat, then a pedestal for her imaginary cat. You watch her for a while, smiling at the way the object shifts meaning so easily in her hands. You wander past an older woman sitting by her doorway, carefully rubbing oil into a carved wooden headrest. Her movements are slow, deliberate, as she smooths the surface with a scrap of linen. You pause, curious, and she glances up, offering you a quiet nod but saying nothing. The grain of the wood shimmers faintly under the thin layer of oil, like a memory being gently preserved. Historians still argue whether the headrest's primary purpose was comfort, ritual, or practicality. Some suggest it was a health measure keeping the head elevated to prevent sweating and pests from crawling too close. Others emphasize its symbolic role, aligning the head with the sun god Ra, elevating the soul toward the heavens. And then, there are those who think it was simply tradition, repeated until no one questioned it anymore. You think about your own pillow again, sitting patiently at home, waiting for tonight. Its curve is familiar, like the arc of your own palm. You can almost feel its cool weight pressing against your neck, the way it seems to both support you and demand you find the right posture. You drift toward the potter's yard, where clay, jars and bowls sit in neat rows, their surfaces drying under the steady sun. Among them are a few freshly shaped headrests, not stone this time, but fired clay. Lighter, more fragile, but still serving the same purpose. You run your fingers along one, tracing the gentle curve, the way it seems to cradle nothing and everything. At once, the potter waves you over, inviting you to feel the difference between the clay and the stone. The clay is warmer, less daunting somehow, though just as unforgiving to lie on. He explains that clay headrests were popular in some regions, especially when stone was scarce. They were easier to make, easier to decorate, but much easier to break. You ask him if he's ever broken one, and he laughs a soft, scratchy sound. Only when I wasn't paying attention, he says. The stone doesn't forgive. The clay expects kindness. You thank him and wander on, your mind settling into the rhythm of the day. The village hums quietly around you bakers, potters, children. The distant echo of chisels still shaping stone into sleep. The sun has climbed higher now, its heat settling onto your shoulders like a familiar weight. You think again about the stone pillow's curious comfort, how something so hard could still hold you in rest. Maybe, like most things here, it's not about softness. Maybe it's about steadiness. You head home, brushing past hanging herbs and sun-bleached laundry, your feet finding their way instinctively through narrow lanes. The stone pillow waits for you, cool and patient, as if it knew you'd come back. You step inside your home, ducking slightly beneath the low wooden beam, your fingertips brushing against the cool plaster walls as you pass. The familiar scent of barley, dust, and faint traces of olive oil wraps around you like an old blanket. The room is dim, but comforting. You kick off your sandals by the door and let your bare feet press against the smoothed earth floor, cool, textured, and somehow grounding after the sun's long conversation with your shoulders. Your gaze drifts to the corner where your stone pillow rests on a woven mat, quiet and waiting. You cross the room and sit beside it, your palm pressing flat against its gently arched surface. The stone is smooth, shaped by time, by your own neck's repeated conversations with it. You rub your thumb along the edge, feeling a slight dip, where your skin has polished it just a little. It's not a grand object. It's not carved with falcons or gods. It's simple, and it's yours. You think again about the stories you've heard, how some stone pillows were shaped to cradle the head during embalming, supporting the neck while oils and linen wrap the body in preparation for the journey to the afterlife. Historians still argue whether these ceremonial headrests were truly the same as the ones used for everyday sleep, or if they belong to a different, more sacred category. Some believe the lines between the sacred and the ordinary were deliberately blurred in ancient Egypt, that every small habit, every tool, held echoes of the divine. You lean back, resting the weight of your head into the familiar curve of your stone pillow. It supports the base of your skull, elevates your neck, and leaves the back of your head suspended, cradled in the air. It's a peculiar sensation, one that modern pillow lovers would probably call a mistake. But here, it's just what you know. You've heard some say that sleeping this way is better in the heat. It allows air to circulate around the scalp, keeps the body cooler through the night. Whether that's scientific or just a satisfying story doesn't really matter. You've tried the alternative, a makeshift cushion of bundled cloth, once during a journey, and it felt wrong, like sinking into something that didn't belong to you. The stone knows your weight. It knows your tilt. There's a sort of dialogue between you and it, a give and take that seems to whisper. You hold me, I hold you. Your neighbor once joked that stone pillows build stronger necks and tougher dreams. He laughed when he said it, teeth flashing like bits of shell, but there's something in it that lingers. Maybe sleeping on stone does change you, teaches you to balance, teaches you to stay still, teaches you to respect the art of rest. The sun's angle has shifted now, light slanting through the reed screen at the doorway. You rise from your stone pillow and step into the courtyard, where your aunt is gently beating a mat with a bundle of palm fronds. Dust floats lazily in the shafts of sunlight, turning the air golden for a moment. Before it drifts away, you ask her about her own headrest, and she nods toward a small wooden one tucked near her sleeping mat. The wood's kinder, she says with a wink, but it still knows how to remind me not to toss too much in my sleep. You smile, picturing the stern curve of her pillow, probably burnished smooth from years of resting her head upon it. She waves you away, teasing you to get to your errands before the sun turns unbearable. You walk toward the potter's yard again, this time pausing at a stall where a man sharpens his chisel against a block of limestone. He's working on a headrest, not for sleeping, but for a tomb. The sides are carved with protective figures, tiny guardians etched into the stone eyes wide, hands outstretched, ready to watch over someone's eternal rest. The man glances up, his face streaked with dust and sweat, and you ask him whether anyone ever used these decorated headrests in life. He shrugs, his chisel pausing mid-stroke. Some did. Some wanted the gods close, even when they were just napping after lunch. Historians still argue whether the everyday headrests were always plain and the tomb ones always ornate, or if sometimes people simply kept their favorites with them until it was time to pass them along stone companions for this life and the next. Some scholars suggest that perhaps there wasn't such a hard divide between daily life and the afterlife in ancient Egypt. Perhaps, like the slow current of the Nile, life and death were always in conversation, always flowing toward each other. Move along, passing traders unrolling bolts of linen, and a boy carrying a bundle of lotus flowers, their scent trailing behind him in the warm air. You pause to watch a group of women gathering near the temple steps, each carrying a small stone headrest tied in a bundle with other personal items. Some are carved with simple patterns, circles, wavy lines, sun motifs, while others are bare. They're stone unadorned, their comfort earned only through long familiarity. You overhear one woman explaining to a younger girl that the headrest isn't just for sleep. It's a kind of anchor, a steady place to rest, not just the body, but the spirit. You can't help but wonder if you've underestimated your own simple pillow dot by the time you return home. The day's heat is thick, pressing like wet linen against your skin. You pour water into a shallow clay dish and dab your wrists and neck, letting the coolness settle briefly before it vanishes into the air. The stone pillow waits for you, the curve familiar, the weight expected. You lie down again, this time not for sleep, but simply to rest. Your head finds its place, your breathing slows, and you trace your fingertips along the edge, following the faint dips and scratches that make this particular stone yours. You think about the generations of sleepers who rested on similar shapes, who balanced their heads against the hardness and still managed to drift into dreams. The stone doesn't soften. You don't expect it to, but somehow it welcomes you all the same. You don't always fall asleep right away. Sometimes you just lie there, your head balanced on the stone, your arms resting softly by your sides, listening to the house breathing. Around you, the faint clink of pottery in the courtyard, the shuffle of sandals in the alley beyond, the flutter of palm fronds brushing against the roof beams, all of it becomes a kind of lullaby, as steady and familiar as the stone beneath your neck. There's a discipline to sleeping like this. You've learned not to twist too much, not to let your head fall sideways. Some people say it trains you to sleep flat on your back, to lie still like a scribe's statue, arms folded in quiet surrender, to rest. Others argue historians still debate this, that maybe most sleepers tilted slightly, heads resting at an angle that let them dream without teetering off the edge of their headrests. Whether this was by design or just personal habit is something the scholars haven't agreed on. You think about your uncle, who once said that the stone pillow is less about comfort and more about permission, a tool that gives you the right to rest. That's why you carry it with you when you travel. That's why the soldiers stack theirs by their feet on riverboats. Why workers tuck theirs under arms when leaving for distant fields. You don't sleep without one, not really. Even if you end up dozing against a palm tree, you miss it, the steady weight, the familiar curve. There's a kind of dignity in it. You've seen the way people arrange their headrests when visiting family, setting them carefully near their sleeping mats, sometimes draped with a bit of cloth to soften the coolness. No one just tosses it down like a sack of grain. It's placed, as if the pillow carries some quiet importance. And perhaps it does. The priests sometimes speak of the stone pillow as a boundary marker between the world of the living and the dreamscape, a place where the spirit floats, but always knows where to return. They call it a neck supporter, not just physically, but spiritually. It keeps your head your seat of thought, your window to the gods elevated, protected. You think of those peculiar wooden models you've seen at the temple market miniature. Beds with tiny headrests, sometimes carved for children, sometimes placed as burial offerings. They're almost playful, these tiny headrests, but they carry the same careful curve, the same delicate balance. It's as though from the very beginning, Egyptians understood that the head needed its own guardian in sleep. Your grandmother used to tell you that the stone pillow keeps the mind sharp. She'd pat her own with a fondness that seemed just a little too smug and say, "Soft pillows make soft thinking." You're not sure that's true, but there's something about the firm pressure against your neck that makes you feel more present, more aware of the weight of your own head. There's also the matter of scorpions, practical concerns. You remember being warned as a child that elevating your head reduces the chance of unwelcome visitors crawling across your face at night. The higher you rest, the less likely you are to become a midnight highway for something with too many legs. Whether or not that's superstition, or just the kind of wisdom that comes from shared village stories, you've always kept it in mind. And so has your neighbor, who won't even nap without his head safely lifted. The stone, though cool at first, seems to hold a little warmth now, a gentle echo from your skin, as if it remembers you. You slide your hand along its base and smile. At a small chip on the edge, a crack from when you tripped carrying it home as a child. You were devastated then. Now it just makes it yours. You wander outside again, walking slowly through the courtyard, passing baskets of dried dates and coils of rope neatly stacked by the wall. The sun has begun its slow descent, and the day's heat lingers like a stubborn guest. You find your way to the riverbank, where traders rest beneath awnings, their own headrests stacked nearby, as if ready to be claimed at a moment's notice. One man gestures to a pile of carved stone pillows, some rough, some polished smooth. He tells you about their shapes, how some are higher, some lower, and some carved with little notches to cradle the neck, just so. There's even one shaped like an animal, a faintly smiling lion supporting a curved surface on its back. Who? Man explains, half joking, that such designs are for those who wish to dream like kings. Historians still argue, whether these animal-shaped headrests were purely ceremonial, or if some people genuinely used them every night. Some say the more ornate ones were reserved for the wealthy. Others believe they were personal talismans, a way to carry protection into the vulnerable world of sleep. You pick up a simple one, the curve worn shallow, and press your palm to it. The stone feels like memory smooth, steady, indifferent to time dot. As the sun edges lower, you join a group gathering near the temple steps. They talk, trade news, and swap small stories about family, the harvest, the river's moods. You hear someone mention a merchant who claimed to have imported headrests from Nubia, darker stone with a sharper curve. Someone else laughs, suggesting that only a fool would pay extra for something that keeps you awake. The stone is for sleep. After all, not for showing off. You return home as dusk leans across the sky, the light soft and dusted with cold. Find your place again, your stone waiting as it always does. You lie back, your head settling into its curve, your breathing slowing. There's a comfort here, in the stillness, in the weight of tradition, in the quiet insistence that sleep doesn't need softness to be sweet. You wait before dawn, the air still clinging to the last cool threads of the night. The stone beneath your neck has held a faint trace of your warmth, just enough to remind you that it has been your companion through the silent hours. You sit up slowly, the practiced, careful way of someone who knows that moving too fast off a stone pillow is a recipe for a stiff neck that lingers for. Dazed out, your shoulders roll as you stand, stretching lightly as you cross the room. The sky outside is still a soft indigo, and the village stirs only in faint pockets. A goat bleating somewhere, a distant thud of a market stall being opened. You wrap your robe tighter around you and step out into the courtyard, sandals brushing. Against the cool dust, today, you've been asked to help transport a new batch of stone headrests from the workshop to the market. It's not glamorous work, but it's necessary. And besides, you like the walk. The streets of the village are still quiet, the air heavy with the comforting smell of wet clay, and the sharp bite of morning fires being kindled. The workshop sits near the edge of the village, where the stonecutters work beneath low awnings, surrounded by piles of rough limestone and tools that catch the morning light. One man nods to you as you arrive, his hands already streaked with white dust, his chisel resting against the half-formed pillow. There's something soothing about watching him work, the slow, steady rhythm of the chisel against the stone, the way each strike brings the curve into sharper relief. He's shaping a headdress now, the arch carefully measured, the base just thick enough to hold steady without tipping. Historians still argue whether these craftsmen followed strict proportions, passed down through generations, or whether each headrest was a little bit unique, a little bit adapted to the user's personal taste. Some scholars suggest there might have been guidelines, certain angles believed to align the head properly for health, for dreams, or for religious reasons. But others think it was more like pottery, functional, personal, a matter of feel and familiarity. The craftsman pauses and wipes his brow with the edge of his sleeve, nodding toward a stack of finished headrests. Some are simple, their curves clean and smooth. Others bear carved lines small, hieroglyphs that hint at the owner's name, or perhaps a prayer for safe sleep. You lift one carefully, testing its weight. It's heavier than you expect, its smooth surface warm from the sun. You balance it against your hip and begin the slow walk toward the river, where the market boats wait. The streets grow livelier as you walk. Merchants pulling carts, women carrying baskets of dates and onions, children weaving between stalls. You pass a small temple where a priest is sweeping the steps, his headdress tucked neatly beside his bundle of scrolls. Even the priests carry them. Sleep, after all, visits everyone. There's a story you once heard that even the pharaohs, rulers of all the Black Land, rested their heads on stone, that in the grand chambers of their palaces, adorned with gold and lapis, they still kept to this simple custom. Whether it's true, historians still debate. Some argue that the stone headrests found in royal tombs were symbolic, meant to elevate the head of the body in death as it did in life. Others insist that even in luxury, the stone was preferred unwavering, eternal, a fitting support for one who would one day join the gods. You reach the river's edge, where reed boats bob gently against the wooden posts. Traders haul crates and bundles aboard, and you carefully load the headrests into a woven basket, securing them with rope knot. As you wait for the boat to depart, you sit near the water, the stone keys still cool beneath you. A boy nearby is stacking his family's headrests, balancing them in a crooked tower. He glances at you and grins, proud of his handiwork, even as the topmost stone wobbles precariously. You smile back, remembering how you once did the same, long before you understood that these stones weren't just objects. They were a kind of quiet ritual, a promise of rest. The boat pushes off, and you watch it drift toward the market. The basket of headrests secured among crates of dried fish and bundles of flax. The morning sun climbs higher now, brushing the tops of the mud brick walls with soft gold. You begin the walk home, retracing your steps through streets that are now fully awake, their air thick with the mingling scents of fresh bread and roasting barley. You pass a potter's stall, where small headrests are displayed alongside jars and cups. A woman examines one with careful fingers, testing its curve against her palm, perhaps imagining how it would feel cradling her head at night. There's a curious thing you overhear, a traveling merchant boasting that some households have begun experimenting with wooden headrests, lighter and easier to carry. The merchant claims they're the next trend, more comfortable, more practical. You raise an eyebrow, but say nothing. Stone has been enough for generations. Still, you wonder if the wooden kind will truly catch on, or if they'll fade like a half-remembered dream. Historians still argue about these shifts, whether changes in materials were driven by fashion, availability, or deeper cultural shifts. Some suggest wooden headrests were seen as less permanent, less tied to the soul's journey. Others believe they simply reflected trade routes and access to different kinds of timber. Back home, you set your own headrest on its usual spot, the faintly chipped edge fitting neatly into the familiar groove on your mat. The afternoon heat presses in, and you lower yourself onto the floor, your head settling into the stone's gentle curve. Your eyes drift shut as the house breathes quietly around you, the weight of the stone anchoring you. Holding you steady between waking and dreaming, the midday sun beats against the mud brick walls as you wake slowly, the stone beneath your neck still faintly warm from the morning. You ease yourself upright, moving with that practiced care that comes from years of sleeping on something as unyielding as a rock. It's a gentle ache, but not an unpleasant one like the reminder of an old friend's firm handshake. You wander out into the courtyard, drawn by the scent of lentils simmering in clay pots nearby. The house is quiet, save for the soft flapping of linen sheets hung out to dry. The air is heavy with dust and a faint trace of river reeds, and you rub your eyes, still clinging to the pleasant weight of half-sleep. Your neighbor is there, woman you've known since you were small, balancing a small basket on her hip. She's holding a headrest, this one carved with a more elaborate curve, the base etched with simple lotus petals. She's rubbing a bit of oil into the stone, working it into the surface with slow, circular motions. You've seen this before. It's a quiet task, a care ritual, part of maintaining the headrest's smoothness, preventing it from drying out and becoming brittle. Some people use animal fat. Others, like her, prefer plant oils. It gives the stone a soft sheen, and according to the grandmothers, wards off pests. There's a local superstition, passed in hushed voices over grain baskets, that the oil doesn't just protect the stone, it protects the dreams, keeps bad spirits from settling into the porous surface. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were widespread or more of a village-level peculiarity, but you've seen enough careful oiling to suspect it's not just a quirky tradition. Your neighbor grins when she notices you watching. She invites you over, handing you a small rag and a different headrest, this one with a faint crack along its side, a little crooked but still solid. Together, you sit in the shade, rubbing oil into stone, the soft swish of fabric filling the quiet. You ask her how old hers is, and she shrugs. Old enough to have outlasted 2 husbands, she says with a laugh. She taps it affectionately, as if the stone is a stubborn companion, and you can't help but smile. As the afternoon light shifts, you part ways, her basket of oiled headrests balanced perfectly on her shoulder as she disappears down the alley. You wander toward the local workshop again, this time drawn by curiosity more than obligation. There's a new shipment of headrests being prepared, some for common homes like yours, some destined for the wealthier households, where they'll be inlaid with bits of glass or copper. The stone cutter shows you a batch of half-finished pieces, their curves still rough, the base is not yet trimmed. You run your hand along the edge of one, feeling the cold bite of unpolished limestone. The cutter tells you, between hammer strokes, that certain stones are favored for specific purposes. He points to a greenish slab serpentine, he says, smooth and cool, often used in headrests meant for the tomb. Not for everyday use, but for the eternal kind of sleep. Historians still argue whether these funerary headrests were ever used in life, or crafted solely for the journey to the afterlife. Some think they were ceremonial objects, placed in tombs to lift the head, preserving the body's shape, and perhaps allowing the soul to breathe. Others suggest that beloved headrests from life often followed their owners into the tomb. A final practical comfort. You ask if the tomb pieces are carved differently, and the cutter nods. Sometimes, he says, they're made higher, more rigid, more symbolic than ergonomic. Comfort wasn't exactly the priority when you wouldn't be waking up. It's a quiet, sobering thought, but also oddly sweet. That even in death, people thought to keep something familiar beneath their heads. Something solid. The cutter waves. You over to another stone, this one already polished, with a simple inscription, just a name and a small lotus blossom. He tells you it's for a merchant's son, lost to fever last descent. The family requested the headrest be made from local limestone, with no foreign embellishments. Something humble, something homegrown. You trace the carved letters with your fingertips, feeling the grooves like tiny roads in the stone. You imagine the boy's family placing this beneath his head, smoothing his hair, perhaps whispering a small blessing before sealing the tomb. There's a quiet dignity in these stones. They're not grand monuments. They're not gilded sarcophagi. They're simple, practical objects that just happen to straddle the space between the living and the dead. You leave the workshop with that thought lingering, the slow rhythm of the chisel still echoing in your ears. Walking back through the village, you notice how almost every home has a headrest propped near the doorway, airing out in the afternoon sun. Some are well worn, edges rounded like river stones. Others are new, their surfaces still sharp and pale. You pass a group of children stacking small pebbles, mimicking the adults, pretending to oil their imaginary headrests. One boy waves at you, his pyramid of stones toppling as he grins. You wave back, knowing full well he'll grow into the habit soon enough. There's a merchant nearby, a cloth seller with a traveling cart. You overhear him trying to convince a shopper that fabric-wrapped pillows stuffed with reeds no less are the future of comfort. You stifle a laugh. Reed pillows? Those are for travelers, not for anyone serious about sleep. Still, you wonder if he'll sell a few. There are always people willing to try the new thing. Historians still debate when soft pillows began to replace the stone headrests in everyday homes. Some suggest it was gradual. Others think it happened quickly with the influx of new materials and trade routes. Some argue the stone headrests persisted longer among older generations who simply didn't trust the softness. You pause outside your home, brushing the dust from your sandals before stepping inside. Your own headrest waits for you, familiar, and perfectly cool. You pick it up briefly, examining the fine crack along one edge, the same crack that's been there for as long as you've used it. It hasn't widened. It holds just like it always does. The afternoon heat clings to your skin, but the stone is steady, always steady. You set it gently back on your mat and let the house fall quiet around you. You wander toward the edge of the village as the light starts to tilt gold, your feet brushing through dust, the familiar weight of the headrest still clinging to your thoughts. The path takes you past a group of potters, shaping amphorae and wide-necked jars, their clay-smeared fingers moving with quiet precision. They barely glance up as you pass, but you know one of them, an older man who sometimes repairs cracked headrests with a kind of resin paste that smells faintly like boiled figs. He's working on one now, a small one probably for a child. He smooths the surface with the heel of his hand and hums as he works. You ask if it's for burial or daily use, and he shrugs, the clay leaving streaks across his tunic. Sometimes, he says, the family won't decide until the last minute. Sometimes. A child's headrest gets used for a few precious nights before being sent along for the long sleep. It's bittersweet, but the way he says it is quiet, matter of fact, like how you might talk about whether to patch a roof before the next flood season. You crouch to watch him work. His movements are slow, practiced circling the base with careful pressure, ensuring that the stone's weight won't crack the clay if it's used as a liner. You run your fingers along the edge of another headrest nearby, one that's already dried, its surface etched with a simple spiral. There's a question. You've heard whispered around whether children slept on these stone headrests as comfortably as adults. Historians still argue whether kids were given softer alternatives or expected to grow into the habit early. Some suggest that wooden versions were more common for little ones, but you've seen enough small stone ones to suspect that comfort wasn't always the first concern. The potter mentions that some parents would wrap the headrests in linen, adding a thin cushion that could be adjusted or removed as the child grew. A small compromise, he says, between tradition and tenderness. He tells you about the different materials, how some people in wealthier households preferred alabaster headrests, polished to a gleaming white, cool even in the hottest months. Others stuck with local limestone or pottery, the materials easier to shape and replace when cracked. And then there were those who favored wooden headrests, carved with floral patterns or tiny protective gods along the base. But stone is what lasted. Stone is what waited in the tombs. You ask whether he's ever slept on one himself. He laughs, tapping his shoulder with the back of his hand as if brushing off a fly. Every night, he says, and he's never woken with a crick in his neck. He tells you, not without pride, that his headrest is older than you, a family piece handed, down, with soft dents along the edge where his father's head used to rest. There's a notion you've heard before, that people pass their headrests along like heirlooms. Some would be carved anew, but most were mended and reused, their history layering like sediment. The family stone, you think, and you like the sound of that. You stay a little longer, watching him seal a crack with resin, a smell sharp and tangy in the warm air. It's not fancy work, but it's careful. It's enough to keep the stone useful, which, in this world, is as good as immortal. You head home as the sun starts its slow dive, the sky burning soft pink at the edges. The streets have thinned out. People are settling in, preparing their evening meals, and you pass a woman plucking herbs from a hanging basket. The scent of coriander and fresh bread trails after her. When you step inside your home, the cool of the interior wraps around you like an old shawl. You brush your hand along the reed mat, settling into your usual corner. Your headrest waits nearby, steady as always. You lower yourself, resting your cheek against the curve of the stone, the familiarity of it easing the last bit of tension from your shoulders. It's not soft, but it's yours. You think about the potter's words, about the quiet, layered history that lives in these headrests. You wonder how many heads have pressed against the stone you use. Maybe none but your own, or maybe it's been held by others, family, strangers, a line blurred by time. Historians still argue whether these stones were seen as purely functional, or if they held deeper personal meaning, passed between generations, like a secret handshake. Some argue the headrest was like a diary marked by use, imprinted with the shape of a life. You run your fingers along the base of yours, tracing the faint lines that were once more pronounced. You've never added carvings. You've never oiled it with much care. But still, it has lasted, carrying you through dozens, maybe hundreds of nights. You close your eyes for a moment, the weight of the day sinking into the floor beneath you. The stone cools slowly against your skin. A soft meow breaks the stillness, and you open one eye to find the neighbor's cat slipping into your doorway, tail flicking with the kind of casual confidence only cats can manage. She pads over, circles once, and settles into the warmest patch of floor. You're not sure if she came for you or the coolness of the house, but you're glad for the company either way. The last rays of sunlight spill in across the threshold, brushing the edge of the headrest, lighting it like a quiet little monument. You reach out, resting your palm flat against the stone, feeling its steady, familiar weight, the promise of one more night, and maybe many more to come. Evening settles over the village with that peculiar hush that only deserts seem to understand. The sand cools faster than you'd expect, the heat of the day bleeding away as shadows stretch and mingle. You can hear soft clinks of pottery, murmured voices, the rhythmic sweep of brooms tiding thresholds. The air carries the scent of honeycakes and cumin, floating lazily on the breeze. You ease yourself up from your resting spot, bones cracking just slightly, one of those gentle reminders that you're not as young as you were last flood season. The headrest is cool to the touch now, its surface etched faintly by years of use. You decide to take a walk. Your sandals kick up little puffs of dust as you wander through the lanes, past doorways framed by hanging reed mats. You know this path by heart, even in the dimming light. It's the same path that leads toward the western edge of town, where a small workshop hums quietly with the soft scraping of chisels against stone. You're headed to visit the stonecutter. He's a friend, or maybe more of an occasional conversational partner, the kind of man who measures time not in days, but in the depth of his grooves and the smoothness of his curves. You find him seated, low to the ground, his back pressed against the side of his workshop, legs stretched out, a chisel balanced across his lap. He's working on a new batch of headrests, the kind favored by merchants who think a little extra carving will buy them better dreams. His hands are steady as he chips a gentle curve into the neck cradle, bits of limestone dusting his knees. You squat beside him, your elbows on your thighs, watching his rhythm. There's something meditative about the repetition: tap, pause, rotate, tap again. You ask him what design he's working on, and he smirks. Just a simple one, he says. A goose, maybe, or a lotus if he's feeling ambitious. Depends on whether his lunch agrees with him. He tells you there's always debate about which designs bring the best dreams. Some people swear by lotus flowers, claiming they encourage peaceful slumber. Others prefer simple lines, believing too much decoration might distract the soul in its travels. Historians still argue whether these carvings were chosen for personal meaning, social status, or just because they looked nice on a dusty shelf. You run your fingers along the edge of a nearly finished headrest. It's smoother than you'd expected, the stone warmed faintly by the fading day. He tells you that some people requested headrests made of basalt, dense, dark, and cool, but they're tricky to carve. Alabaster's easier, he says, though you need to be careful not to crack it while hollowing the base. You ask him how many he's made in his lifetime. He shrugs. Hundreds? Thousands? He's never counted. But he remembers his first, how his teacher had laughed because he made the cradle too deep and no one could balance their head in it without sliding sideways. He still keeps that one in the corner, chipped and dusty, but too sentimental to toss. You stay there with him a while longer, talking about nothing in particular, the kind of conversations that carry no weight but feel comfortable in your bones. He tells you about a customer who asked for a headrest shaped like a fish, and another who wanted one with a carved cobra, claimed it would guard his dreams from bad omens. You both chuckle quietly, knowing that what really guards dreams is a full belly and a cool place to rest your head. The stonecutter offers you a flat piece of limestone to try your hand at carving. You accept, gripping the chisel awkwardly, tapping gently, far too gently, and he snorts. You'll be here until the next dynasty at that pace, he says. You smirk and tap again, slower still. It's not about finishing, you decide. It's about the sound of the stone yielding beneath the chisel, the small flecks falling like ancient snow, the feel of your muscles relaxing into the task. You manage a crude circle, no flower, no bird, just a wobbling loop that could generously be called an egg. The stonecutter claps your shoulder in mock approval. A good start, he says. Perhaps you'll open your own shop in a few centuries. As you rise to leave, he hands you the stone fragment, your lopsided circle etched forever, a souvenir of a patient evening. You tuck it into the fold of your sash, feeling its reassuring weight as you step back into the quiet street. The village is softer now. Lamps flicker behind reed curtains, their golden light glowing like little embers against the cooling air. You pass a neighbor coaxing a stubborn goat into a pen, another sweeping the last of the day's sand from his stoop. The sky overhead shifts to deep indigo, The first stars beginning to appear like shy guests. You reach your home again, sliding aside the curtain with the ease of routine. The air inside is cool, the floor smooth beneath your feet. The headrest waits, steady, as if it's never moved. You settle yourself once more, positioning the headrest just so beneath your neck, the cradle fitting you as though it's been waiting all day. The stone fragment, a little lopsided egg, rests nearby, a quiet reminder of your evening. Historians still debate whether these headrests were more about practicality or spiritual precision. Some say the angle of the neck was meant to keep you looking toward the sky, the realm of the gods, even in sleep. Others argue it was simply the best solution for life in a place where bugs, dust, and heat demanded elevation. You close your eyes, your breathing steady, the stone cool and familiar beneath you. The cat returns, she always does, curling near. Your ribs, tail flicking with a final soft sigh before she drifts into her own quiet dreamscape. The village has settled. The air hums with stillness. The weight of stone, the rhythm of days, the easy patience of nights, all of it wraps around you, steady and unhurried. You drift gently into the shape of the stone. The night deepens, and with it, the texture of the world softens. Sounds thin out, like fabric stretched just past its weave. The occasional shuffle of footsteps fades, replaced by the quiet hum of a village settling fully into sleep. You wake briefly, not because of discomfort, but because the stone beneath your neck reminds you gently that it's there. It's not a soft pillow, not by the definitions you know, but it doesn't need to be. It holds you, cradles the weight of your skull like a palm cupping a stone. You shift your shoulders, listen to the faint scuff of your linen against the floor mat, and glance toward the edge of the room. The faint silhouette of the cat is there, one ear twitching in her dreams, probably chasing a lizard, probably winning. You know you should get up soon. The morning market waits, along with the bustle of measuring barley, tallying fish, and arguing over dates that are always either too dry or too sticky. But not yet. The floor is still cool, the headrest firm and familiar beneath you. You trace the curve of the stone with your fingertips, noticing how it's smoother now than when you first received it. Years of use have worn it into a soft satin sheen. Stonecutter was right. It takes on your shape, your weight, your story. You remember him telling you that some headrests were buried with the dead. A travel companion, he called it. Something to support the head during its long journey to the afterlife. Historians still argue whether the elaborate designs were meant to impress the living or guide the spirits beyond. You sit up slowly, legs crossed beneath you, the headrest resting at your side. The sky outside begins to lighten, that soft, uncertain gray that precedes the sun's proper arrival. You reach for your morning cup-a-simple, worn vessel with a crack running down one side, patched with careful twine. You pour barley water. Into it, the faint scent of roasted grain, rising with the steam. You sip slowly, watching the world unspool around you. The first neighbor opens his door, stretching his arms high as if he could scoop the sky. A donkey brays in protest somewhere, down the road. Life resumes in the quiet way it always does. You wander outside, headrest in hand, and find a spot near the low stone wall where the market begins to take shape. Merchants arrive with carts, piled high with baskets, onions, lentils, ceramic jars, glinting faintly with morning dew. You know most of them by name. Some you've known since they were chasing scarabs barefoot through the alleys. Some you know only by their merchandise, the fig seller with his crooked smile, the potter who insists his clay is blessed by Sobek, though you're pretty sure it's just river mud with good branding. One merchant, a woman with her hair tied in careful plaits, is setting out a small display of headrests. You wander closer, curious, your own resting in the crook of your elbow. Her wares are modest plain, practical, with the occasional lotus carved shallowly into the cradle. She's carefully stacking them, aligning the bases so they don't topple. As the day's bustle grows, you ask her if these are for daily use or for the tombs. She shrugs. Some buyers haven't decided yet. She tells you, between smoothing her linen apron and arranging her copper scales, that there's a rising fashion for softer bedding. Some merchants from distant lands travelers, she says, whose shoes don't match and whose language sounds like reeds in the wind, are selling pillows stuffed with plant fibers. Imagine, she says, laying your head on something that sinks when you press it. You try to picture it. A pillow that gives way, that doesn't push back like stone. You can't quite imagine it. You're not sure you'd like it. She says some argue it's a sign of decadence, a softness that might melt a person's resolve. Others are curious, willing to trade sturdy linen for something that rustles when you shift. Historians still debate whether the adoption of soft pillows in certain regions mark the beginning of cultural exchanges, or simply the passing of comfort from one climate to another. Some claim the stone pillow remained in favor long after fabric ones appeared, because the stone was more than a tool. It was a symbol. You run your thumb over your headrest's curved top and think about that. Merchant offers you a discount, half joking. Perhaps you'd like a softer one for the coming summer, she says. You laugh, decline politely, and tell her you're too stubborn for that. You've got one that's just right. The morning market swells around you now, voices rise. Coins clink. A young boy chases an escaping chicken with comedic urgency. You navigate through the rows, your headrest cradled casually under your arm like a loyal companion. You pass a weaver arguing about the color of his thread, a baker carefully brushing sand from his bread display, a woman balancing clay pots with the effortless grace that comes from years of doing exactly that. As you wander back home, you consider the strange elegance of it all. That comfort is so specific, so personal. What softens one person's rest might unsettle another. You think about the plant fiber pillows and the travelers who carry them. You wonder if they feel as sturdy, as anchoring, as the familiar weight of stone beneath your neck. You reach your doorway, slide the curtain aside, and step into the quiet cool of your home. You place the headrest back in its rightful spot, its cradle waiting, its surface still holding the faint warmth of your palm. You settle onto the mat, cross-legged, the world quieting around you once more. Outside, the village hums into its rhythm, the sun climbing higher, the scent of baking bread beginning to weave through the air. You let the day drift past you, knowing the stone will be there tonight, ready to cradle your thoughts, your breath, your steady heartbeat. It's simple, really. The stone stays. The rest comes and goes. You linger on the mat, fingers drumming softly against your knees, your gaze resting on the familiar curves of your stone headrest. The day has begun to properly stretch its arms now. Sunlight seeps in through the open doorway, brushing pale gold across the floor. The world outside bustles, but you're in no particular hurry. After all, the markets will wait, and the fishmongers will still argue about yesterday's catch, even if you arrive late. You run your hand along the headrest's base, feeling the gentle grit of time worn smooth by your touch. You know its story, or at least, you know the story you've given it. The ancient Egyptians didn't use headrests only for sleep. They believed, in some cases, that the elevated position of the head was essential to keeping the breath of life. Perhaps the spirit itself aligned with the body. Historians still argue whether these headrests were primarily practical objects or sacred guardians against whatever mischief the night might bring. The idea of protecting the head during sleep was no small thing. Night was not just rest, it was transition, vulnerability, a time when the Kava life force could wander. Some believed the headrest's rigid support kept the Ka from drifting too far. You sip the last of your barley water, a faint sweetness lingering on your tongue, and think about the peculiar balance between comfort and caution, between the softness of linen sheets and the hardness of carved stone. You remember the story your uncle told, the one about the nobleman who refused to use a stone headrest because he was convinced the cold touch of alabaster would sap his energy. He ordered one made of wood, lacquered in the colors of the lotus, so he could pretend his head was floating on a flower. A servant said he slept terribly anyway. You shuffle to the corner where your sandals wait, the leather curled from long use. They're cracked at the sides, but they still hold. Like the headrest, they're not fancy, but they've molded to you over time. You slide them on and step outside, the ground already warming beneath the mid-morning sun. The street is fuller. Now vendors waving, children weaving between baskets, a camel chewing thoughtfully on something it probably shouldn't. You walk past the potter stall again. He's now deep in conversation with the scribe about whether painted symbols on a jar actually improve the taste of its contents. You're tempted to stop, to argue playfully, but you know you'll be back tomorrow. Some debates are better when, stretched out over days, that you make your way toward the embankment where laundry flutters in the breeze, bright linen snapping against the steady hum of the river. The women gathered here talk quickly, fingers twisting knots, laughter rising in bursts like startled birds. One of them calls you over, gestures to a pile of cloth that needs moving. You oblige, stacking the damp linen carefully on a sun-warmed stone dot. She asks you, casually, whether you've ever thought of changing your headrest. She says she's heard whispers of goose feather cushions being sold by traders from far-off ports. She squints as she talks, as if trying to imagine what sinking into something so soft would feel like. You tell her you've heard of such things, but you're loyal to your stone. She laughs, tells you you're as stubborn as a donkey in the market square. Maybe, but you like the feeling of something solid at your neck, something that won't shift away in the night. You move on, weaving through the tangle of baskets and shawls, passing a man selling amulets shaped like the Eye of Horus, the protective gaze supposedly keeping misfortune at bay. He waves you closer and offers you one for a good price. He says it will guard your dreams, make your sleep deeper, your nights lighter. You tap your headrest with your knuckles and tell him you've already got a guardian. He grins and says, maybe get a backup, just in case. You leave him to his sails. Amused. Your feet carry you back toward home, familiar rhythms guiding your steps. The headrest sits in its place, waiting, unchanged. Its shape, its weight, its quiet promise of consistency. You sit again, the day growing warm now, the air thick with the mingling scents of roasted onions and sweet dates. The cat returns, tail flicking with lazy satisfaction as she claims the spot nearest the mat. You scratch behind her ears and feel the soft rumble of her purr beneath your fingertips. The stone is not soft, but it is steady. You wonder, briefly, whether softness was ever the goal at all. Perhaps it was always about structure, about the comfort of knowing what won't collapse beneath you. The headrest doesn't cradle you because it yields, it cradles you because it endures. Historians still discuss whether the ancient Egyptians thought of sleep as a rehearsal for death, or simply as a sacred passage worth protecting. The truth may lie somewhere in between. A good headrest supports the head. A great one supports the journey. You glance around the quiet room, the filtered sunlight catching on the curves of the pottery, the faint scrape of the cat repositioning herself. The stone beneath your fingertips is cool again, ready for the next nap, the next dream, the next piece of yourself you'll rest upon it. Still warm, still waiting. The rest of the day will come and go errands, conversations, the inevitable squabble over miscounted figs. But the headrest will be here, steadfast, a small, carved witness to your life's rhythm. You lie back once more, the cradle familiar against the curve of your neck. The ceiling beams a silent audience to your steady breath. And somewhere, in that hush between waking and sleep, you know you found the perfect balance between the softness of your days and the firmness of your nights. The stone stays. Rest comes and goes. You shift your weight gently, feeling the cool stone pressing beneath your neck, steady as always. There's something almost meditative about the quiet support it offers. No fluff, no sagging, no surprises. Just stone, smooth and reliable. Your fingers tap lazily along the carved sides, tracing the simple curves worn by years of use. You know these grooves, just as you know the pattern of sunlight crawling across the mat each morning. Familiar things that anchor you. You remember the basket maker's story from last week about his uncle who tried to sleep with a rolled-up reed mat as a pillow. Claimed it was more comfortable than stone. But the man tossed and turned, the reed slipping away in the night, leaving him stiff and sore. He went back to his stone headrest in the end. Some experiments aren't meant to last. Historians still argue whether the headrest's primary purpose was comfort, protection, or ritual. Some believe it served as a status symbol, carved from the best materials for the elite, while others think its shape, alone cradling the neck and exposing the ears, was meant to keep insects at bay during the night. You glance toward the doorway, where a young boy sprints past, a cloud of dust kicking up behind him as he chases a straw ball. His laughter ricochets off the stone walls, a sound as solid and joyful as the ground beneath your feet. The headrest is, in its own way, like that part of the everyday, as ordinary as sandals, but tied to deeper things, threads that link life, and the passage beyond. Your neighbor's daughter waves as she hurries by with a bundle of freshly woven cloth. She pauses long enough to ask if you've finally replaced that old stone with something softer. You smile, shake your head, and tell her you wouldn't trade it for all the feather cushions in the Gelta. She laughs and tells you that you're older than the river itself. Maybe, but even the river respects the stones it can't move. You rise from the mat and step outside into the warmth of the midday sun. The sky is clear, a kind of blue that dares you to look too long. The familiar hum of the market drifts toward you, voices haggling, donkeys braying, someone calling out the day's catch. You make your way toward the reed seller's stall, brushing past baskets of onions and fragrant bundles of fresh mint. The seller greets you with a grin and tells you he's got a new shipment of mats that would make excellent headrests softer, more forgiving than your stubborn stone. You run, your hand across the tightly woven reeds, their texture rough but pliable. You raise an eyebrow and ask whether he's ever tried sleeping on one. He admits he hasn't. He says his father always used a stone headrest, and that was good enough for him. Sometimes we sell what we don't use. You both laugh, and you leave. Him to his mats. On your way back, you pass a scribe sitting cross-legged in the shade, writing carefully on a strip of papyrus. His reed pen scratches softly against the surface as he records the inventory of grain deliveries. He looks up briefly and tells you that some households now order wooden headrests painted to look like stone. Decoration without dedication, he says. You tell him stone is stone. Imitations don't hold the weight of the real thing. He nods thoughtfully and returns to his task. Historians still puzzle over the variety of materials used for headrests across ancient Egypt. Stone, wood, ivory, even pottery, all present, but each carrying different connotations. Some suggest that stone was reserved for more formal or ritual settings, while wood was for daily life. Others believe the choice was simply a matter of availability and wealth. You retrace your steps home, the sun beginning its slow descent, lengthening the sinking shadows along the path. The headrest waits for you, right where you left it, unassuming but undeniably yours. You sit once more, the day's dust clinging to your feet. You press your palm against the headrest, its surface still faintly cool, a small reminder of the steadiness you've come to trust. The cat saunters back into the room, tail high, eyes half-lidded with the supreme confidence of a creature who knows where the warmest spot is. She circles twice and plops herself down right against your leg, her purring a low, steady hum. You lean back onto the headrest, adjusting until it cradles your neck just right, not too high, not too low. There's a rhythm to finding that perfect angle, a quiet knowledge passed down not by instruction, but by feel. You remember the story told by an old fisherman, how his grandfather carved his own headrest from a piece of driftwood, its shape guided by the grain of the wood itself. Said it was the most comfortable thing he'd ever known, though his wife said it looked like a squatting frog. Comfort is subjective. You can't measure it by softness alone. Sometimes it's the familiar weight of stone beneath you, the certainty that it won't bend or shift when the night air grows cool. Your neighbor's voice floats in through the window, calling her children inside, reminding them to shake the sand from their sandals before stepping onto the mats. She's told you before how her family debates replacing their stone headrests with woven cushions. But every time they try, they find themselves waking with stiff necks and dreams that feel oddly incomplete. Historians still debate whether those dreams held cultural significance. Some argue that the position of the head elevated and stable was believed to invite specific visions or protect the sleeper from malevolent spirits. Others think it was simply a practical way to keep the head cool in a land where the nights can still hold the heat of the day. The cat shifts, pressing closer. To your side, her fur warm and soft against your palm. The stone beneath your neck doesn't change, doesn't soften, but you wouldn't have it any other way. The hum of the street fades with the setting sun, the market quieting, the scent of roasted fish lingering in the air. You close your eyes, letting the steadiness of the stone and the gentle purring beside you lull your senses into the slow rhythm of evening. Still warm, still steady. You wake before the sky turns gold, your body somehow attuned to the rhythm of the rising sun, even when you'd rather sleep longer. The floor beneath your mat is cool now, but not uncomfortable. The stone beneath your neck? Still the same, steady, solid, unbothered by the night. Your cat is gone, probably prowling the outer courtyards for beetles, or simply chasing shadows. You sit up slowly, your shoulders rolling forward with a satisfying creak, and you glance down. At the headrest, it has stayed perfectly in place. No surprise there. Holding its simple shape, its quiet duty performed. You shuffle across the room, sand catching briefly under your heels as you move toward the doorway. The faint sounds of stirring households reach you, buckets scraping against wells, sleepy voices murmuring greetings, the clatter of small ceramic jars. Morning in the village is soft, unhurried, except for the roosters, who are on a completely different schedule. You step outside and stretch, the dawn breeze brushing against your skin. The air carries the promise of another warm day, but for now, it's cool enough to make you appreciate the quiet weight of the linen draped around your shoulders. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptians saw the stone headrest as purely functional or deeply spiritual. Some believe it served as a literal support, nothing more. Others suggest the shape and material played a role in protecting the soul, keeping it tethered safely to the body during vulnerable sleep. There's no universal answer, only fragments, texts, images, headrests found in tombs, their significance as layered as the desert itself. You make your way to the bakery, where the day's first loaves are being shaped by steady hands. Baker greets you with a soft grunt, offering a small loaf in exchange for the handful of dried figs you've brought along. It's a familiar trade, no words needed. You tuck the bread under your arm and walk slowly, savoring the quiet. Past the stone walls, past the rows of reed baskets lined up for market, past the old woman sweeping the courtyard with a bundle of dried palm fronds. She hums a tune that has no beginning and no end. Your neighbor's son passes you, balancing a clay jug of water against his hip. He asks you whether you finally considered trying one of those new padded headrests and travelers are selling. You raise an eyebrow, ask him whether he's tried one himself. He admits he hasn't, but says he's heard stories. Softer, cooler, but somehow not quite right. You both know how this conversation will end. You nod, offer a non-committal grunt, and continue on. The weight of tradition is not easily swapped for novelty. You return home to find the cat waiting, tail curled neatly around her paws. She blinks at you as if to ask why you ever left. The bread is warm in your hands, the surface dusted with flour. You tear off a piece, the crust crackling faintly, and eat it slowly as you settle once more onto the mat. The headrest waits its familiar curve just where you need it. Historians still wonder whether variations in headrest design across regions reflected different beliefs or simple practicality. Some featured rounded cradles, others were flatter, some were tall and ornate, others squat and undecorated. Perhaps the variety mirrored the diversity of dreams themselves. You've heard stories, of course, how some people claim that their best dreams come when their head is resting on stone. Others say the dreams are sharper, more vivid, like the stone channels something steadier, something ancient. Whether that's superstition, or simply the way the neck aligns against the hard curve, who can say? You close your eyes briefly, letting the quiet of the morning settle around you. There's a comfort in the predictability of the day. You know that soon you'll head to the fields, or perhaps you'll repair that leaning wall in the courtyard. Or maybe, if you're lucky, you'll get away with doing very little at all. The cat paces once, then flops heavily against your side, her soft fur a quiet counterpoint to the unyielding stone beneath your neck. The headrest, you've realized, is like a slow friend. It doesn't dazzle, It doesn't boast. It simply stays. The stone doesn't bend to your shape. You bend to it. And somehow, that's enough. You remember your grandmother's words. The stone remembers the shape of the sky. At the time, you thought she was being poetic, or maybe just a little strange. But now, you think you understand. The stone remembers things that humans forget: patience, stillness, the weight of what has passed through countless hands. Your neighbor's daughter passes by again, this time carrying a bundle of rushes. She waves and calls out, asking if you're finally going to replace that old stone. You grin, shake your head, and tell her that when the stone wears out, maybe you'll think about it. She laughs, saying you'll wear out long before the stone does. She's probably right. Historians still debate whether the ancient Egyptians believed their headrests were more than simple objects, whether they carried echoes of the person who used them, whether the carved symbols were more than decoration, whether dreams traveled better through cool stone. There's no way to prove it. But when you lie back, the stone perfectly cupping the curve of your neck, you can't help but think that some things last because they refuse to change. The morning deepens, and the cat, always the heat-seeking expert, shifts to claim the patch of sunlight slipping through the doorway. You sigh, stretch, and decide that maybe, just maybe, you'll stay right here a little longer. Still steady, still yours. You eventually pull yourself to standing, the last crumb of bread still clinging to your fingertips. The floor is cool beneath your feet, but the sun is beginning its steady climb, and you know that soon the house will warm. Brick by brick, stone by stone, the stone headrest sits where you left it unbothered, unchanged, quietly waiting for you to return to it later. The idea of resting your head on something else now feels vaguely disloyal, as if you and the stone have an unspoken agreement. You provide the dreams, and it provides the steady place to return from them. You step outside into the villages. Daily rhythm. The well has gathered its usual crowdwomen balancing clay jars, children giggling as they splash too much water, older men who lean on worn walking sticks while pretending they aren't eavesdropping on anything. Your neighbor greets you, arms full of rushes destined to be woven into baskets or mats. She asks about your stone again, the one you stubbornly refuse to replace. You tell her it's still doing its job, still just the right shape, still holding its secrets. Historians still argue whether the carvings often found on ancient Egyptian headrests were purely ornamental or served as protective charms against bad dreams. Some believe they were simply decorative flourishes, marks of status or personal taste. Others think the etched symbols, sometimes depicting protective gods, serve to shield the sleeper's vulnerable spirit. There's no consensus, but the stone still holds its place in both camps. Practical and possibly magical dot, you watch as your neighbor's daughter brings out a headrest of her own, one her family just acquired, a newer one, with smoother edges and a touch of painted glaze still clinging to its base. She holds it up proudly, turning it so the morning light catches its curved neck support. You admit, quietly, that it's lovely. She grins and says that maybe when your stone finally crumbles, you can borrow hers. You know that day is not Sundat as you walk toward the edge of the village. The temple's silhouette rises in the distance, its familiar columns etched against the sky. You're heading there today, partly for errands, partly for the comfort of its cool stone corridors, where scribes murmur to each other and sandals scuff along worn paths. You pass the market's first few stalls along the way, where copper trinkets and woven sandals are already laid out, catching the breeze. A man offers you a headrest carved from sycamore wood, lighter and perhaps more forgiving than stone, but you wave him off. Wood softens over time. You tell him. Stone endures. You arrive at the temple's outer court, where the head scribe is, seated under a shade awning, his stylus scratching faintly across a sheet of papyrus. You exchange brief greetings and eventually meander toward one of the side chambers, where stone workers are crafting what looks to be a new series of headrests. The stone cutter invites you to observe. He chips away at the upper curve of a new piece, explaining, almost absently, that shaping the cradle is the most delicate part. Too sharp, and it's uncomfortable. Too shallow, and it fails to hold the neck properly. He tells you that everyone's neck is different, But the stone doesn't care. It simply waits for you to find your angle. Historians still argue whether stone headrests were custom-made for individuals or mass-produced to approximate an ideal shape. Some point to inscriptions that mention "my headrest" in personal tombs, while others suggest that most headrests followed the same design template, practical and interchangeable. Perhaps it was a bit of both. You run your fingers along. A finished headrest, its surface cool and surprisingly smooth, despite the fresh tool marks nearby. The stone worker tells you that the finest ones, the ones destined for tombs, sometimes bore protective spells etched underneath words meant to keep the sleeper safe even beyond life. You ask whether he's ever carved one for himself. He smiles and shrugs. When I have time. You both know he probably never will. The makers often don't. You stroll through the temple, the scent of old incense and sun-warmed stone wrapping around you. You linger briefly near a mural, its painted gods still vivid, their outstretched hands seemingly offering both blessing and curiosity. One figure reclines on a platform with a familiar stone headrest beneath their neck. The shape is almost identical to yours. You nod to them in quiet acknowledgement, as you head back toward the village. The cat crosses your path again, her tail flicking with importance as she patrols her territory. She pauses to inspect your ankles, as if ensuring you've collected. Enough stories for the day. The house welcomes you back with its familiar hush. The stone headrest is waiting, of course. It hasn't moved. It hasn't softened. It hasn't lost its shape. You lower yourself onto the mat, resting your head against it once more, the curve familiar, the surface steady. There's comfort in knowing that the stone will outlast you. It will outlast your neighbors. It might even outlast the village itself. Perhaps one day, long after you've gone, someone else will find it, will marvel at its shape, will wonder whose dreams it once held. Historians still puzzle over the endurance of stone headrests in Egyptian culture, how such a simple, firm, and seemingly unforgiving object could become so universal, not just in life, but in the very preparation for eternity. Some believe it was symbolic of the rising sun, supporting the head as it rose each morning. Others think it simply worked, and that was enough. The cat curls up beside you again, her warmth a quiet contrast to the cool stone beneath your neck. You close your eyes, breathing in the lingering scent of bread, incense, and the faintest trace of morning dust. The house settles around you, its stones exhaling in the slow heat of the day. You're not in a rush. The stone is patient. You can afford to be. You drift for a while, suspended in the soft hum of the house, in the quiet weight of the day, your head gently balanced on the familiar arc of stone. The breeze teases at the doorway just enough to stir the woven mat and ruffle the cat's fur. She flicks her ear in response, but doesn't bother to move. She knows the good spots, and she's found hers. Eventually, you rise, the back of your neck faintly imprinted by the stone's curve. It's not unpleasant. It's like a whisper of where you've been. You stretch, slow and deliberate, and take a moment to run your palm across the surface of the headrest. Smooth, cool, still perfect. You step outside into the afternoon warmth, sandals scuffing softly against the packed earth. Down the street, children chase each other, weaving around a vendor who's hawking glazed pottery, some of which unsurprisingly includes headrests in bright ochres and faint blues. You wonder if any of them will outlast even the simplest stone. A neighbor calls out to you, asking whether you've ever tried sleeping on a woven pillow. You laugh and shake your head. Why would you? The stone has never failed you. Historians still argue whether other materials like wood, woven reeds, or fabric-stuffed cushions were considered inferior or simply used by different social classes. Some surviving records suggest wealthier Egyptians occasionally had soft pillows, perhaps as luxuries, but the stone remained the default, the standard, the thing everyone came back to. Perhaps because it worked, or perhaps because it simply felt right. You wander toward the riverbank, where the slow pulse of the Nile carves its way through the day. Boats drift lazily, their sails bellied with just enough wind to be convincing. Fishermen call to one another, tossing baskets and pulling ropes with practiced ease. The scent of silt and wet reeds wraps around you. You pass a cluster of basket weavers, their hands moving so swiftly it seems the rushes braid themselves. One pauses to rest his neck against a curved wooden support. You can't help but smile. He's imitating the stone, though you know the feel is not quite the same. There's a quiet pride in stone. A man nearby sets out freshly cut headrests, their edges still rough, the carving marks plain as daylight. He invites you to look, to feel, to test. You run your fingers along one. It's new, yes, but the shape is familiar, the slow arc, the careful taper. You know this design. You know this weight. It's the universal curve, the one the body knows, without thinking. Historians still debate whether the dimensions of ancient Egyptian headrests evolved over time, or whether they were perfected early and simply repeated. Some argue that the earliest versions were flatter, more block-like, gradually becoming more refined. Others suggest the iconic shape appeared quickly and stayed because it didn't need improvement. It was functionally perfect. You ask the craftsman whether he's made many. He nods. He says it's steady work, not glamorous, but necessary. People always need a place to rest their heads. Whether they're rich or poor, old or young, everyone comes back to the stone. You stroll along the river's edge, watching a heron pick its way through the reeds with the kind of patience you've come to admire. The boatmen haul their catch ashore, their laughter and low voices mingling with the soft clatter of amphorae and fishing nets. On your way back, you pass a small shrine tucked between homes, its stones warm to the touch and its offerings neatly arranged. Someone has placed a headdress there, carved with protective symbols, ankhs, lotus flowers, maybe even the faint outline of Bes, the household protector who wards off bad dreams and scuttling pests alike. You linger there, fingers brushing the yawn. Carved surface. It's not uncommon for people to dedicate headrests to the gods, especially ones connected to sleep or protection. Some scholars think the headdress design, lifting the head, was a symbolic gesture keeping the sleeper elevated, literally and spiritually, closer to the divine. Others argue that it was more practical a way to stay cool in the heat of Egyptian nights, allowing air to circulate freely. But the two explanations aren't mutually exclusive. Sometimes comfort and symbolism walk the same road. You make your way home as the afternoon light shifts to the softer gold of evening. Shadows lengthen. The village quiets, save for the rustling of linen drying on lines and the occasional squawk of a chicken protesting bedtime. Inside, the house holds on to the day's warmth, though it's beginning to mellow. The cat greets you with a slow blink, then promptly returns to her prime spot near the mat. She's got priorities. You lower yourself back onto the sleeping mat, resting your head on the stone once more. Its shape greets you like an old friend, steady, unmoved, familiar. The coolness is a soft relief against the lingering heat behind your ears. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the quiet rhythm of the house, the occasional creak of wood settling, the faint crackle of a neighbor tending to their evening fire. Historians still ponder why the stone headrest endured for millennia when softer alternatives were known and available. Was it tradition? Aesthetic? Religious comfort? Maybe all of it, maybe none of it. But you know this much, it works. It's solid. It keeps your neck just where you like it. You shift slightly, finding that sweet angle again, the one where the stone cradles the base of your skull and the rest of your body seems to sigh in agreement. The cat purrs quietly, a soft reminder that you're both experts in the art of comfortable stillness. The headdress doesn't need to explain itself. It's done its job, night after night, year after year, asking for nothing more than to be there when you need it. You let your breathing slow, the edges of the day softening like linen worn smooth by time. The stone holds you. You stay there for a while, your head gently balanced on the stone, the warmth of the room and the quiet hum of the village settling around you like a blanket. The cat stretches, taps her paws softly against the mat, and curls into a new shape, claiming the edge of your blanket as her personal real estate. You don't mind. You can hear someone outside sweeping the courtyard, the rhythmic scrape of a palm broom against stone as steady as breathing. Somewhere further off, a jug tips over, spilling a quick musical splash of water. Life keeps moving out there, slow and unbothered, as if it knows there's plenty of time for everything inside. You keep your hand resting lightly on the headrest, fingertips tracing the gentle curve you've come to know so well. You wonder how many hands have done the same, how many heads have found comfort in this same shape, this same cool stone surface, across years, homes, generations. The beauty of it is in the simplicity. It doesn't need feathers or tassels or silken slips. Just a shape that fits the back of your head, a curve that knows your neck, a weight that won't slide when you shift in the night. Historians still debate whether the average Egyptian found these headrests truly comfortable or simply endured them as tradition. Some say the raised head helped protect against snakes and insects. Others claim it was mostly about airflow in the stifling heat. Some even argue that the stone served a spiritual function, lifting the head toward the gods in preparation for the afterlife. But whether you think about the sacred or the practical, the stone remains the same, solid, unmoved. Patient, you sit up slowly and look around the house. The light filtering through the small doorway has softened to that dreamy gold of late afternoon. Dust motes hang suspended in the air, turning slowly like lazy stars. The sleeping mat is still there, folded neatly by the wall. The small woven basket where you keep your daily odds and ends is exactly where you left it. The wooden chest, the clay jug, the linen bundles all quiet, all waiting for nothing in particular. You rise and step into the courtyard, the packed earth cool under your sandals. The sky is a deepening blue now, the kind that holds on to the sun's warmth just a little longer. Neighbors pass by, balancing baskets, exchanging a few lazy words, nodding their HELLOS at the corner of the market. A potter displays a new line of painted headrests, some carved with lotus flowers, others with protective symbols like the Wajet Eye or the Ankhs. You run your fingers across one, feeling the faint ridges of the design beneath your touch. Maybe tomorrow you'll buy a new one, though you'll probably return to the one waiting at home, the one that knows you. Historians still argue whether the headrest symbols had personal meaning or were simply decorative. Was a lotus chosen because of its association with rebirth, or just because it looked nice? Did the Ankh offer true protection, or was it more of a visual tradition? You suspect it's probably both. On your walk back, you pass a small shrine, where someone's left a food offering and, curiously, a miniature stone headrest. Maybe for a loved one who's passed. Maybe for a deity who appreciates good neck support. Either way, you pause to nod, a small acknowledgement that even the divine deserves a comfortable rest. The streets are quieting now. The markets are closing. The sun slipping down behind the low walls. The air cools quickly in the evening, and you pull your shawl a little tighter as you step through your doorway. The house greets you with its usual soft silence. You settle back onto your mat, the stone headrest waiting exactly where you left it. The cat returns, tapping her way across the floor to her favorite spot, which, of course, is right next to you. She curls into her tight circle, nose tucked under paw, and lets out a soft breath that sounds suspiciously like contentment. You lay your head back against the stone. The weight of it is familiar now. The way it cradles your neck, lifts you just enough, feels as much a part of you as the mat beneath you. Historians still debate whether the design of these headrests was passed down through formal apprenticeships or simply copied by generations of craftsmen. Some say the shape's perfection was born of trial and error, others that it came from a deeper understanding of the body and the heat of the land. Either way, here you are, centuries later, resting in the same way, on the same curve, in a room, warmed by the same sun. You let your breathing slow. The cat shifts, her fur brushing your arm. The day's final light slips softly through the doorway, and the stone, cool and steady beneath your head, holds you. Wind down, 300 words. The room grows, quieter now, softer. The distant sounds of the village have faded. The sweep of brooms, the clatter of pots, the lazy calls from passing neighbors, all of it tucked away for tomorrow. You breathe, slow and easy, letting the weight of the day melt into the stone beneath your head. The air around you is still, the walls holding the last warmth of the sun like a gentle memory. Even the cat, now a soft comma at your side, has settled into the perfect stillness of sleep. Your hand rests lightly against the smooth curve of the headrest. The stone is cool, but not cold, firm, but not harsh. It cradles your head just so, the way it has for countless others before you. A shape passed from generation to generation, quiet and unchanging. A small but faithful companion. You imagine the soft creak of the house as it settles for the night, the hush of linen brushing gently in the breeze, a faintest scent of clay and sun-warmed dust lingering in the air. Outside, the world has slowed, the market stalls empty, the boats at rest, the Nile flowing as it always does, steady, ancient, and unhurried. There's no need to move now. The mat is soft beneath you. The stone holds your head. The air wraps you gently, like a slow exhale. Everything in this moment has settled into place. The stone asks nothing of you. It simply offers its quiet support, its simple purpose to hold, to steady, to let you rest out so you breathe softly. You let your eyes grow heavy. The night welcomes you. The stone holds you, still warm.